Hello, everybody. We are going to take just a minute and let everybody get logged in and connected to their audio. We will be starting in just a moment. I want to welcome you to the Science and Technology Committee. Just want to make sure everybody is in the right place and connected to the audio before we begin. I do want to welcome you all to turn on your cameras. We would love to see your faces. The best way for us to get to know you is by seeing your face with your name. And then at the end, we will be doing self-introductions of everybody that's on the call who stays at the end. And we will also be doing some Q&A after the presentation. Today, we have a very cool presentation from Gustav Weibull. Gustav is the Senior Director of Business Intelligence and Research at Discover the Palm Beaches. He has spent the last 10 years developing and innovating research initiatives to measure the impact of Discover the Palm Beaches on the overall tourism economy. Again, I want to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded, so if you would please stay muted. And then at the end, we will welcome you to turn on your microphones to ask any questions and introduce yourself. So with that, Gustav, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm glad to be here, and it's exciting to do a different kind of presentation than I normally do. So if you've seen me present before, it's usually a bunch of boring stats. This time, it's going to be the nuts and bolts behind the scenes of how some of the stuff that we're tracking gets done. It's a little early, so hopefully this is not a lecture that's really boring. I know there's a joke by Lewis Black that said that if you didn't want economics to be a secret, you wouldn't teach it first thing in the morning. So hopefully it's not the case here. If you get your coffee and you can enjoy the show here. So first I'm going to do a little introduction to Discover the Palm Beaches, just in case you don't know who we are. And we are the official marketing corporation for Palm Beach County. We are also accredited by Destinations International, which is a international organization of destination marketing organizations. We are private, not-for-profit, so we are contracted by the county, and we have a board and everything that we have to adhere to. In terms of funding, we are funded by the bed tax. So when you stay at a hotel in Palm Beach County, you pay a 6% tax on top of the sales tax. And all these organizations on the screen here are beneficiary to that tax. In 2019, we collected $54 million. That actually dropped to $34 million. That was down 20%. And you can see here the allocation. So Discover the Palm Beaches, we get 30% of that. And the bulk of that, probably 2/3 or even more, go straight towards advertising. I get a little piece for research. So I have to be very creative in how I get information. So we'll dive into that. So the area, the business intelligence, I see it as really three big things that we're trying to understand. One is generally what's happening in the industry, what's happening in tourism in the state, in the country, globally. With the pandemic, that's been a big part of what I've been doing, just trying to understand what's happening everywhere, how we're recovering globally. And then there's what's happening in the county. So understanding what is tourism, the big picture tourism for Palm Beach County. So how many people are coming here? How much are they spending? Where they're coming from? All those sorts of things at the big level. And then drilling in to the third step is what Discover the Palm Beaches contributes to that. So measuring the pie, what's happening in the county, and then how does Discover the Palm Beaches influence that, and how can we influence it even more? So the big numbers, and this is 2019, the tracking is the economy is 12% of the economy, which is almost $8 billion tourism generates. It supports 70,000 jobs. One question I always get is, if you look at the actual jobs report, there's a leisure and hospitality number, and that's, in 2019, it was roughly around 100,000. And that's because the difference in the number is because the leisure and hospitality sector is also supported by residents. So we extract that from the spending in there. There's McDonald's is a good example of that's generally going to be supported by a resident and maybe some visitors, but generally it's going to be residents doing that. So you see that 4 in 10 restaurants are supported by tourism, 1 in 10 retailers are supported by tourism, and also 60,000 households. And then tracking what our contribution as an organization Discover the Palm Beaches. We have a strategic plan. We just refreshed it. We have these 5 goals. What we changed from the last plan, which is really notable, is we added championing equity, diversity, and inclusion in there. Most DMOs really focus on the brand awareness and marketing and bringing in meetings and events. We take it a couple steps further by trying to align with the community. It's tourism is a shared community value. We believe it's just as essential as the water and fire department and police and all those other things you get as a resident when you pay taxes. Tourism is a vehicle to provide economic growth, economic opportunity for residents. And also we want to focus on sustainability too. So doing tourism the right way and also ensure our sustainability as an organization. And the mission is to really grow the tourism economy. That's the big thing. And then the vision is to position the Palm Beaches as a premier tourism destination. And my role is to track the performance of all these. We have 40 different objectives tied into all of these 5 goals with metrics in there that we're trying to reach. And I'm monitoring that on a monthly basis and then attributing all those performance to the overall pie and how we contribute to the tourism economy. So then getting into why we're here, and it's to understand sort of the nuts and bolts of sort of the big picture, visitor profile, their visitation, how we measure visitation. So I've been with Discover for 10 years, and there was no research before. There's no person in charge of research before I came on board. There was a lot of research that was happening that was being outsourced. So I came in to kind of look at everything and then sort of optimize what is a good research platform for Discover. That's prudent and accurate and can measure this. So we've measured visitation a number of ways through the years, and I think what's important to measure, this number is probably one of the more accurate numbers that comes out of the research because we just have so many different data sources. So we have, when you have a variety of data sources and they all kind of come together around the same number, then we can be very confident that these numbers are indeed accurate. And that's at the county level. The challenge is when we get into the city level or dive into that, then we've had to kind of figure out new technology and new ways to track that to help understand that story. We'll get into that just in a second, but I want to kind of highlight how these different sources that we are using. So traditionally, there's syndicated research. There's a few companies out there that survey travel on a monthly basis, and through that they ask, where did you go throughout, the world? And the Palm Beaches is one of those options. If they select the Palm Beaches, then we ask them a bunch of questions about their trip to the Palm Beaches. The beauty of this is that we can get really good understanding of our market share. So we know exactly out of all travel that's happening, we know what the Palm Beaches is capturing. And we can also compare that to, other destinations within Florida if we want. We can see the market share from different markets. How many New Yorkers are we capturing versus Miami or Orlando? And we can also ask, the behavior things, how many people are in their travel party, how much money do they spend, when do they plan their travel, what sources do they use to plan their travel, all sorts of things that you can only get by asking someone these questions. We also work with Visa. We get Visa credit card transaction data, and that can give us exactly how many cards are being used, where those cards are coming from, and how much money is spent on those cards. And we have it into the different sectors in there. And from the Florida Department of Revenue, we have the total spending. We know exactly how much each sector is generating in terms of gross sales and tax receipts. So we can reconcile all these data points together and get a really good story on exactly what visitation is. Now the challenge is understanding visitation to each of the cities. And the challenge, and I say the challenge for us, it's really because we're contracted by the county, so our main focus is really what's happening in the county overall. So we can replicate the exact same process to each one of these cities, but then if you see that, we would basically have 13 times the research budget to do exactly the same thing for each one of these cities. So that's really cost prohibitive in there. So we've tried to find some creative ways into answering these questions, because everyone wants to know this. Every city's asked me this for 10 years. How many people are coming to West Palm Beach? Well, we have generally an idea. We know from hotel performance, we get that. That's one thing I forgot to mention there. We know exactly how many rooms are being sold in the county. We know the inventory of where all these rooms are within the county. We know how much the average rate for all these rooms are in the county. So we can generally see, okay, there's a lot of rooms in West Palm Beach and there's not so many rooms in Lantana. So we have some relative understanding of what tourism should look like. But in this case, we went out to our traditional visitor profile and we asked someone, we knew they went to the Palm Beaches. We asked them additionally, where in the Palm Beaches did you go? And asking this question is really complicated because not only are you coming into the Palm Beaches, you're probably traveling around the Palm Beaches, and we also know that we are sharing a lot of visitation with Fort Lauderdale. So someone coming to the Palm Beaches is also spending time in Fort Lauderdale. A lot of them maybe just to go to the airport, but they're doing something else in there. And maybe they're staying a night in Fort Lauderdale as well. So there's a lot of moving parts to your trip. So in the Palm Beaches, you could fly into PBI, stay a night in, at the Ben or the Marriott, and then you can move on to, have dinner on Palm Beach, go down to Delray for a night. You might stay in Delray for a night. There's a lot of visiting friends and family, so you might stay with a friend and family member for two or three nights, and then go to the Breakers or the O for the weekend, or just for a night or two to have that resort experience. So there's a lot of moving parts. So we try to ask, what cities did you stay overnight in? What cities did you spend some time in as a day visitor? And if you add all these up, it goes way over 100% because of all that, traffic in there. But the big challenge in asking this is, if you see here on the map, no one really understands exactly where they are. So this is, one zip code is a big thing. You might have a mailing address that's West Palm Beach, but it's not incorporated as West Palm Beach. It's not the actual municipality of West Palm Beach. We have gotten some zip code level data from Visa. We can do that. But then you get the challenge, and a lot of the zip code doesn't actually overlap in a lot of cases with the area you're interested in. And, just asking someone where they went is, so it's going to be as accurate as their knowledge of that. And we have no idea what anyone's knowledge is. And then the other issue is, do we really care? So like in this case here, the western part of West Palm Beach, which is more single family homes and not really any tourist attractions in there. They might have said they went to West Palm Beach, but they didn't actually go downtown. So what we've figured as a solution is now with cell phone technology, everyone has a device that has a GPS signal, and we can really pinpoint. We know behaviorally where you're going. We don't have to rely on you knowing exactly where you were, remembering that, knowing the geography of where you went. You probably don't know that if you're not familiar with the area, and visitors generally aren't. So in 2015, we actually used a company, and this is probably the infancy of this kind of technology. So we used them to put all of our digital assets, our advertising, our website. We put pixels on there. So when someone was exposed to that pixel on their device, say in New York, and then that device moved into Palm Beach County, we could capture that. So we knew that they were served an impression from one of our advertising, and then later on, it could be we track them for 2 years. For 2 years later, they could show up, and then we would know that they were exposed to ads and then visited. And this technology wasn't initially based on GPS. This was based on Wi-Fi. In 2015, I think you can make the argument that it's probably a little different now, that if you, at some point, your device would go onto a Wi-Fi. So the IP address would change and the location would change at some point during your trip. And all we would track is the arrival. We had no other information other than that that arrival happened and this device originated somewhere else. There was a little more sophisticated technology with tied to email. So if you had multiple devices, which most people have multiple devices, even at maybe your work computer, if you use the same email, if you've logged into the same email, a Gmail, over all these devices, then we could also correlate. So if that laptop that you were served an ad didn't travel with you, but you use that laptop and your cell phone for the same, for the same email account, and then the cell phone comes over and then went onto Wi-Fi, we could track it that way. So we had an understanding, at least from, not from a visitor standpoint, visitation standpoint, is the one thing about research that we have to be really careful of is where your sample's coming from. Is it representative? And we've done a lot of research internally with our customers that reach out to us and understanding their travel behavior and trying to answer some of these questions as well. But the travelers that we're talking to actually look a little bit different than the general visitor, and that's due to a lot of factors. We target certain markets, particularly like New York, maybe not some of the Midwest markets. So we're missing those visitors. There's a lot of organic travel that happens. There's business travel that happens. That doesn't involve us. There's other organizations that advertise, the Breakers advertises, Marriott advertises, Wine Country Safari, they advertise. So they're bringing visitors. So we don't have that necessarily the sample we have in that holistic picture. That's the same issue with this, but moving later into as technology improves, this company started using GPS data, and then they also have a panel similar to how the visitor profile works. So the panel then is all devices that represent a control, and then we also have the group that's being exposed to us, so we can actually measure the difference between a control group that's visiting and those that are actually being exposed to our advertising and see the difference in there. There's also other companies that leverage this that we've worked with. We want to test out different technologies to see which one works better. So this one panel-based, then there's an app-based one. Basically, every phone you have apps on your phone, and they have location tracking technology in thousands of apps. I mean, there's likely one app on your phone that's tracking your location that you're not aware of, or maybe you're aware of it and you don't understand why they're tracking your location. Well, it's probably this company that's buying this information and then reselling it to someone like us. And then there's another company that actually buys this information directly from the cell phone provider. So they'll buy it from Verizon or AT&T and then resell it. I think this is a good point to talk about privacy issues. So the data we get is anonymized. We don't know anything about anyone in here, and nor do we really care about that. I think that's one of the misnomers from the privacy concern, is that this data is not really valuable outside of it being an aggregate and having a view of a population that we're interested in understanding this data points here. So, I mean, unless there's a reason to track an individual, then I think there's probably legitimate privacy concerns, but we're not seeing that information. We don't want to see that information. We just want to see the trends and stuff that help us understand what's going on in the market. And with that too, the panel-based approach seems to be the best at addressing that, where these are generally individuals that are opting into this and they know that this is happening. And it also, the panel avoids things like iOS 14, which is making it harder to track this. So some of these apps, the app approach might not be as effective on a Apple device, which could skew your sample. Again, right, the sample you're getting this information from is really important to the actual story and being accurate to what you're trying to understand. And also with California, they have privacy laws, which might likely come to other parts of the country that we have to deal with. So we're comfortable with the panel-based at this point to kind of avoid some of those pitfalls. So with that, we have basically GPS dots here. This is every device that we've tracked that come into the county. So we purchase data for devices coming into Palm Beach County as a whole. So again, this is, the mandate, or what we're tasked to do, is to understand tourism, promote tourism to the county. So that's the big picture view that we're doing. And then we want to drill in from there, where the survey methodology, which we would use traditionally, you could even have people on the street interviewing, which would be really expensive. We find that this approach, we can actually make it so we're not doubling the price every time we want to study a new area. We can leverage the fact that we have all this data for the county. We just need to draw areas in the county. So this map here shows some areas that we've isolated within the county that now we know anything that's coming into the Palm Beaches. And then we also have these sub points of interest that if a device goes in to there, we're tracking that as well. So you have the airport you see there, the convention center, Rosemary Square, Clematis Street, Northwood. There's Worth Avenue on there, the beach on Palm Beach there. So if someone's coming into the Palm Beaches and they cross into one of these areas, and now we know there's a visitor to the Palm Beaches and exactly where they go. And when they cross into multiple areas, we can see that cross representation or cross visitation in there. So getting into some of the data that we've seen. So this is a chart of the first quarter of 2021. This is daily arrivals. So these are overnight arrivals. So someone that came into the day they came into the Palm Beaches, and so there's a count on there. So you can see it's a little spiky in there, but that's pretty much every Friday, every weekend is where you see a spike. On here, this big spike in the middle of the screen, that's the President's Day weekend. That's the Friday. So you can see we track 32,000 individuals coming into the Palm Beaches over that weekend. And this is the visitor counts, the overnight visitor counts from this data for the first 3 months of 2021. So 1.4 million overnight visitors. And this isn't really our official visitor count. we're going to reconcile this again, like with our official numbers later on, but it definitely is, as over time, we might get more comfortable with these numbers being the accurate or more indicative of the true numbers. So you can see the growth there, and we have hotel performance, and this does correlate with hotel performance and the general story there that March we saw a huge increase in this pent up demand. Vaccinations. We had a lot of advertising that we did in December that I'm going to talk about a little bit later to influence this number here. So I said that in the earlier technology, we only knew that they came here, and we basically stopped tracking them as soon as we could verify that we're here. That's all we cared about. Now the devices being pinged every 2 hours. So every 2 hours, we know where this device is going, and if that we can get a length of stay here. So this is again, first quarter of 2021. This is the breakdown of overnight visitors, how long they were staying. On average, it was 3.1 nights for an overnight visit. And we also know where these devices are originating from. So we have here the top origin markets, and this again is for the first quarter of 2021. So a lot of New Yorkers, that's our #1 market. And then underneath that, there's a lot of interstate travel. But this is a little different than what we've seen in the first quarter of a typical year. So that whole road trip, avoiding flights, is still seems to be very true. And we have exactly how many nights they stayed in the Palm Beaches. So a New Yorker over the first quarter was staying about 4.4 nights. And then this is interesting, a different approach than what we've traditionally found these demographics, where we would just ask in a survey saying, what's your household income, what's your age range, and all these. This is overlaying census information. So we know the exact census tract where visitors are originating from. So taking census level data, we can do a weighted average based on, okay, this neighborhood in New York had, 5% of the visitors, and then they have this kind of demographic makeup. So then we just applied averages on there to get a general idea of the demographic makeup. Now, that doesn't answer the question of actually who is traveling. If we don't know if the entire household is here or if part of the household is here, we still have to rely on asking those questions to visitors to find that. But this is incredibly powerful for advertising, so we know exactly which demographics are coming and which ones we can be targeting when we're buying media. We also can geofence anything anywhere in the world if we want. So we could draw a picture over Paris and say how many people are coming to the Palm Beaches and going to Paris if we wanted to. This is it's not limited to just our geography. So we drew something over Fort Lauderdale, the airport, and so we're tracking arrivals into PBI and to FLL that are also coming into the Palm Beaches. So you can see here, and this is first quarter, there's a lot more arrivals into Fort Lauderdale than to PBI that are visitors to the Palm Beaches. And this is probably a little bit different as well. Fort Lauderdale's had a lot more airlift come back, at a faster rate. There's a lot more schedules than PBI right now. So it's interesting to see that in real time. We have, from the airport, we have exactly how many arrivals are coming into the airport, and then we have exactly how many visitors that we're tracking that are in the airport. So we can see here in December, 50% of all arrivals into PBI were visitors, 78% in January, and 80% in February. We've looked at the convention center. So we can tell when there's an event in the convention center. So this is December. There was only one event at the convention center, which was Turning Point. And as you can see here on the daily track, there's this blue line, there's no one in the convention center until these days in there, that's good. We want to see that because there was nothing happening in these. And then when there was an event, now we can see that there are visitors into the convention center. So this event which was a couple days in December, we contracted about 3,500 room nights with the hotels for this event. And then they gave us a registration of 2,300 attendees. And then we tracked over 4,000 visitors in the convention center over these dates. So there's a lot more people coming to the convention center that weren't necessarily registered for this event. And then this is a Turning Point is like a young Republicans. There were some speakers that were, politicians and high-level politicians. I think there was a lot of media, so that could explain why there's a lot of other attendees that we didn't, or visitors to the convention center that we weren't understanding, and that helps us understand that these events that we're bringing in have more impact than what we have, contracted on the books. And then these 4,000 individuals, half of them also went to Rosemary Square. Half of them flew into PBI, flew in and out of PBI. A quarter of them flew in and out of Fort Lauderdale. And then 30%, a third of them went to Clematis Street. And then this is not just the events. So this is over from December through March. We know exactly, again, how long someone's staying in market. So over essentially the first quarter plus December, it's about 3.5 hours someone would spend in the convention center, and then the total trip in the Palm Beaches was just a little bit more than a day. Now, someone flying into PBI, they're spending in almost 2 hours, I guess, waiting around for their flight. And then their total trip in the Palm Beaches is 3 days. Fort Lauderdale, they're spending a little bit more time. So it shows you that the convenience of PBI, it's you don't have to go through TSA. It doesn't take you as long to go through TSA, and you can get there a little bit later. They're spending 2 hours, and then they're actually having a shorter trip for 2 days. And then the last thing I want to mention is sort of our tracking. So we know what's happening in the county. We know how many people are coming here. We know how much they're spending. So we're doing a lot of stuff to influence that. We know we don't influence 100% of that. So what do we actually influence? Like how much tourism is a factor of the promotion that we're doing? So in December, we received CARES dollars. We received $1.8 million from the CARES Act, and this was to be spent on advertising. And we spent it in a variety of ways, in a lot of traditional ways. So we can't track these all these 178 million impressions that we delivered. Out of home billboards, there is a way, I think, in the future we'll be able to do that, since we can know the GPS locations of all the billboards and any out of home advertising, and we can see who's driving by it, and then see if they're visiting. So I think there's future potential to track that. Television, traditional television advertising, we can track like Hulu and some of these connected TV and on-demand buys. So there's a lot that we are able to track, but out of home, in this case, we weren't able to track. So this is an example of the digital ads that we had out there. So if you were, searching for travel, keywords, because we're trying to target someone that's in the travel mindset. If you're in that mindset based on your, search patterns and then what's happening on your computer, then you'll probably would have seen one of these if you were in New York or in the market that we're targeting. So this is sort of the chart of the correlation in here. The top half is the exposures And on the legend is that actual media buy vendor that we were using, the palmbeaches.com is our website. So we can track the effectiveness of any one of these buys. So we know which vendors are working and which ones are not. So we can optimize how we're spending our money. And on the bottom is the arrivals associated and attributed to each one of these media vendors and how they're coming in. So you see it takes time that all the impressions were delivered in December, and then you see arrivals happening all the way through the first quarter of 2021. What all this means, the big picture here is we tracked 90 million impressions out of that was 178 million. Out of those, 2.5 arrivals happened for every 1,000 impressions that we delivered. Remember, we have a control group, so we have a group of visitors that we're tracking that are not exposed to advertising, and then we have the ones that we know that are exposed to advertising. When we compare those two groups, there's 60% more visits from the group that saw advertising. So when that helps us know that these were effective, that there's incremental visitation happening because of advertising. It's not just all people are going to travel here anyway. No, there's a group that's needed that exposure to make the decision to come here and eventually come here. And then they stayed, those exposed stayed 7.8 days on their trip. And then again, with the control group, this length of stay was 69% higher among those that were exposed. So when they saw advertising, that informed them maybe on more things to do, and that they've, it's not just a weekend trip to the beach. There's actually some cool things inland that you'd want to check out on your trip here. So you need to stay an extra day. So how can you get this information if you're really interested in it? So this is kind of the sales pitch here. So we're buying, again, that total picture for the county, and every time we look at a new location, we have to pay for that. So to help support that, we're looking for, hey, if you're interested in this, we're basically subsidizing access to this kind of information for anyone that's really interested in understanding more. So if you are interested, reach out to me. I have my email here, and that's the end of my presentation. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That was a ton of information. Whenever I get those notifications on my phone, like, do you want this app to track your location or allow access to your location? And I'm always like, why do they need this? I never knew that it was going into all of this information until just recently, whenever you first brought this to us. So I think it was this year or last year that I just found out what my phone was really asking me. So again, I want to go to questions. Please feel free to turn on your microphones and ask. I see Michael. Yes.
Gustav, that's a really good presentation. I don't know whether to be worried about how Big Brother's watching every move we make or impressed with it, but that's such granular level that you can drill down to. My question is, I have a couple things. We're seeing a lot more economic development activity that I'm involved with from California. Do you see an uptick of visitors coming from California? Because I didn't see it on your slide. And the second part is from Europe. I didn't see stuff in Canada. I always thought those were very large markets, and I must have missed it if you touched upon it.
Yeah, so California, I have to look into that. It is LA and San Francisco are in the top 15 markets. They've been that way for years. I haven't really looked and noticed if there's been an increase lately. Now on the international side, this isn't tracking international devices. At least the panel-based one isn't that methodology. They don't have their with GDPR in the UK and other privacy laws. They're kind of scared to really try that. And the sample, they're not confident that it's going to give us the information, the right story for us to know what's really happening. The app-based one, they do track international. So I have some of that data. I haven't dived into first quarter data. I know that in the fourth quarter, when we get the international data from the credit card spending, that there are Canadians coming here, and they are growing, even though there is a restriction. I guess there are some flights and I guess legitimate some reasons that they're allowed to travel, and so it is happening, but it's nowhere near on the levels that we would have seen in a typical winter.
Wow. Okay. Good question. Yes, James.
Okay, when you showed your geofence around Rosemarys, is that the geofence that, how do you know it's a visitor, a differentiate from someone going down there to shop that lives here or going to eat? How do you differentiate that?
Yeah, so when we look at the Palm Beach County area, we are looking at devices that are originating from 25 miles or more away. So there's a common evening location. So these devices have to be not they're not sitting in the county overnight for a long period of time. And so then we toss that all out. And then there's also commuters. That's a little more challenging. So we can see device patterns that are someone that's living in Fort Lauderdale that works in West Palm Beach, for example. We kick that out too, because that's a daily pattern, and that's actually been a problem with the pandemic, because now you can't see that Monday through Friday traffic. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that's looking at how these devices are behaving on an annual basis, because there's all that history of what that device's movement's been happening, that we assign variables to understand that these are visitors. They're not someone that's a resident or a commuter.
Okay. Any other questions? So I kind of want to know, like, when you're tracking, say, my phone, like, I work here, I live here, but when I leave, does that affect any of your data? Does that take away any of your data when I leave for a significant period of time? Like if I travel across seas, does that do anything to your data?
No. So if you went on a 2-week or 3-week or a month, trip, we would, as a resident, you would probably be going to someone else's data set.
Okay.
Another location, because that's using this. So it wouldn't, one thing too, we also, like, if snowbirds is another one I forgot to mention. We do only limit this to a device that's been here for 2 weeks. If you've been here for more than 2 weeks, you're cast out of that data as well, because we're interested more on the short-term travel. Yeah, so there's a lot of history. It's the same thing with the credit card too. There's, your spending patterns in New York. If you're spending money in New York all the time and swiping the card in New York for 10 months, and then you show up here, then we can say, oh, okay, that's a New York credit card, or that's a New York cell phone, and vice versa. So you would be using your phone and credit card in Palm Beach County, and then you leave somewhere else and you're someone else's visitor and you're in their data.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? I do want to do some self-introductions before we hop off of here. Shadi, I see that you popped up and your mic. Oh, Melinda?
Yes, I just have one quick question for Gustav. It's Melinda with the Science Center. I was just wondering, can you confirm, so this is based off of ad impressions, not clicks, correct?
Yeah, so when we're tracking the advertising performance, there's a pixel on there. So as long as that pixel gets activated from an impression, then we're tracking it. So if they might, so we can compare it to click-through rates, and we do see that a click doesn't necessarily mean it's a visit, but also an impression can be just as effective without the click-through rate, because they're being exposed. You know, they might see the ad, and then instead of click on the ad to go to our website, they go to Google and search our website.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you.
All right, great questions. Great questions. All right, so I am going to move on to the, I see a hand raised. I don't know if it's
Michael.
Oh, Michael?
Yeah, I had a question. Gustav, you said you're phasing out data after 2 weeks, but I'm starting to see clients that are here for 3 to 4 months, and then they'll travel to New York and California, but they're spending money and they're staying at hotels when they're here for 3 to 4 months. Are you guys looking to take that into consideration?
Yeah, we generally haven't, because that's a snowbird. If they're staying at a hotel, they're paying for that lodging. They're paying, I guess, an occupancy tax on there. So that's an interesting thing to think about. But for this data set, yeah, it's only a 2-week stay. If you're staying longer, we're considering it as a snowbird, and it's we don't. I guess we're not that sophisticated to really look into everything individually. So we have to make these parameters that are general to what we want to understand. So if we widen that, I don't know. We'd have to think if we're gonna start tracking what's more a traditional snowbird rather than capturing this a new market. But that's something to definitely be aware of. Thank you.
Right. Great. So I do want to get to know each and every one of you. So I'm going to go around and I'm going to call your name. And if you would just tell me your name, your company, and your title. Keep it brief because we do have quite a bit of you, and I want to end on time in honor of your schedules because I know you are all so busy. So with that, I'm going to start with Bob Quittner.
Am I on?
You are. Oh, yes, you are. Well, now you're muted. Okay, we'll come back to Bob. James, I'm going to go to you.
Okay, my name is James Collins, Collins Insurance. Do health insurance, life insurance, and Medicaid.
All right, thank you for joining. Okay, now back to Bob. Bob, you're on. You don't have to click anything.
Am I on?
You are.
Okay, yes, it was very interesting. I don't know that it helped me with what I do, but it's always interesting to find out about these because that's where we live. So it was interesting for that regard. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bob, can you tell me what company you're with?
Oh, I'm sorry. Broward Factory Service. We keep you cool.
All right. Thanks, Bob. Joan.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Joan Quittner. I am with LegalShield and ID Shield. I'm a director. We offer affordable legal representation. Gustav, your presentation was extremely interesting, and I thank you very much for cluing us in. And I'm an ambassador with the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Corbett.
Good morning, Michael Corbett with Career Source Palm Beach County. Gustav, you always do a good job. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. Sharon.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Sharon Hoffman with SunFast. Gustav, I always knew we were being tracked in some way, but that was enlightening. So thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Alan. Oh, you are. There we go.
I'm sorry I was a little late. I had a little technology problem this morning. My name's Alan Gerwitz. I'm with a company called AG Specialty Services. We do medical and marine training. We work with doctors to everyday people on their certifications that are needed. We work with mariners for the Coast Guard and Navy or anyone who goes to sea, even on cruise ships.
Great. Thank you for joining. Shadi.
Hey, good morning, guys. Good to meet everyone. I'm Shadi Irani with the Palm Beach Post, Palm Beach Daily News, and Local IQ. Local IQ is the marketing arm of USA Today Network, and we do a lot of what Gustav just mentioned from a digital advertising perspective. And so this is very interesting, and love to see it at the scale of Discover Palm Beaches and what they do with it. So thank you for the presentation this morning.
Thanks, Shadi. And Michael.
Me, Michael
Yeah,
Osorio?
yes.
Hi, I'm Michael Osorio. I'm from Michael Headshots. I'm a headshot and portrait photographer, member of the headshot crew. I'm based out of West Palm Beach, Florida.
All right. Thank you for joining, Michael. Dr. Cruz.
Morning, Kirby. Good to see you, Gustav. I think I saw you at Sergio's birthday party last time. I'm Peter Cruz. I'm a chamber board member, and I work at Florida Atlantic University.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. And then Melinda.
Good morning, everyone. It's Melinda Grenz. I'm with the South Florida Science Center and Aquarium, and I'm their marketing director.
All right. Well, thank you for joining, everybody. I do want to mention that our next Science and Technology meeting will be on Thursday, June 3rd from 9 to 10 a.m. And I am planning this to be in person. So fingers crossed, we're still working on that. I hope to see you all in person very, very soon. We do have a few other events coming up this month that will be in person. So we have our business builder on Friday, May 21st, which will be here in the Chamber boardroom. So that is an overview of everything that the Chamber does. So if you're not familiar with us, please come check that out. And then we have our Business Awards Breakfast on Thursday, May 27th at the Palm Beach Convention Center. So I hope to see you all there. Please reach out if you have any questions. Go have a brilliant day. Thank you so much, Gustav. What a wonderful presentation you did for us today. Bye.
Bye-bye.